Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Well, hi, and welcome to inFocus. We thank you for joining us today. We continue to monitor what has taken place since our elections back on November the 5th. And tonight's program, we're going to be taking a look at its impact, the U.S. elections' impact upon Israel and relations with Israel, as well as some current goings-on with Israel as well. It's our privilege to have back in studio with us Dr. Richard Schmidt. He is founder of Prophecy Focus Ministries, also pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church, speaker on the weekly TV program Prophecy Focus, the radio program Prophecy Unfolding. He is also a speaker at national prophecy conferences. Many of you know him for 32 years of law enforcement here in Milwaukee area, and even serving as acting sheriff. He's an author of several books, including some of his most recent, Globalism, The Great World Consumption, AI, Artificial Intelligence, Transhumanism, and the De-Evolution of Democracy, and coming very soon, Presidents, Politics, and Prophecy. Dr. Schmidt, good to have you back.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we want to focus in on Israel this evening, and certainly taking a prophetical look at this as well. But shockwaves were really sent around the world when election results were made very clear that Donald Trump was president-elect here for the United States, and to have a Congress to back him up as well. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, became, we understand, the very first one to congratulate him. And here's what he said. He sent out his congratulations saying, "Dear Donald and Melania Trump, congratulations on history's greatest comeback. Your historic return to the White House offers a new beginning for America and a powerful recommitment to the great alliance between Israel and America. This is a huge victory in true friendship, Benjamin Netanyahu." They really did have a good, close working relationship.
Well, absolutely. It truly is. I mean, we're looking at it from a Christian perspective. I'll be honest, even as a pastor, as a Christian, I was worried about this election, seriously worried. And the conservatives and the Christian community rose up in a marvelous way, and that which we've been looking for to get away from the socialist and Marxist agenda, the people, and it's just amazing what happened. When you look at Israel, when you look at Benjamin Netanyahu, and he should be thrilled to death that President Trump won the election. President Trump in his last term made it very clear he's going to support Israel. The current administration, or at least what we'll call the Biden-Harris administration, better put, they have been kind of waffling. Sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. So I think Benjamin Netanyahu is thrilled to death, like most of us as conservatives are thrilled to death, that things are going to be moving in a right biblical direction, at least for the time being.
Yeah, and we'll look specifically at Israel in just a moment, but you authored the book on globalism as well, and you see everything pushing toward that one world system. The deep state really much behind that. Donald Trump has not been their fan. I mean, they have not been a fan of Donald Trump in that regard.
Absolutely. So what we're looking at, and the Biden-Harris administration was very, very much on a globalist plane, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum. Everything was about the globalist picture, the climate change issues, the big summits. Well, what we're going to see, if it holds true like it did last time, President Trump will push a nationalist agenda, not a globalist agenda. And quite frankly, from a Christian perspective, we don't want a globalist agenda. That matches up with the Antichrist wants a globalist agenda. God's people do not.
We know this puts the United Nations in a tizzy, the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, and others. Another topic for another day, but it's been disrupted right now. But as we take a look specifically at this Trump victory now and what this means for Israel, he has repeatedly said that the October 7th attack on Israel never would have happened had he been president. While we never know if that would have happened or not, but he has stated it would not, he has warned this. He said, "We want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office, or you will be paying a very big price." He's not kidding, is he?
I don't believe he's kidding at all. Now, how is he going to make good on that? That remains to be seen. I mean, you look at the Israel Defense Force, and they've been pounding Hamas. And I don't know, it appears, and I can only speculate right now, that President Trump may be bringing the American troops into these areas. Maybe it's going to be a serious sanction again on Iran and all their proxies. So I don't know if he's going to pose an economic threat. to these countries, or if literally the military is going to get involved. But I take what he says seriously. Something major is going to take place.
Yeah, he is not intimidated by others in this regard. And I see even Israel's Prime Minister, Netanyahu, has reportedly offered captors $5 million in safe passage from Gaza if they free the hostages.
That's an amazing amount of money. And you look at these folks that have been suffering in Gaza and other places that actually, if you will, they don't want to put up with the wars and all the nonsense that's been going on. And on top of it, to give $5 million American dollars to somebody, that I don't know how many are going to jump on that wagon. The problem is, in that culture, people know. If you rat out, if you will, Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Their own people are going to kill them. So is it worth $5 million to potentially die from your own? Remains to be seen.
Or be your life taken from Israel. I mean, the IDF as well.
Right.
Without question, Iran has been calling the shots on terrorism against Israel from many different fronts. But reports also indicate that Iran has made death threats on the life of Donald Trump.
Well, supposedly, the last I heard, there's 3 hit groups in America right now from Iran that are trying to track down, figure out how to get to the president. Well, again, there's been a historic amount of money now put into the protection of President Trump, which is a great thing. 2 assassination attempts already made on him. So, I mean, it's a huge issue. And, I tell our folks at our church and others that we have through the media to get to, President Trump needs our prayers, and we're just begging God to keep him alive. If he's assassinated, I mean, that would just be a horrible, horrible outcome for the great blessing that we have right now. So I think it's a real deal. It's a well-known deal. Not only is Iran after him, but you can imagine the others that have already tried assassination plots. Just to be straightforward, there's a lot of, and I'm just going to use the word, there's a lot of crazy people that want President Trump dead. And we just got to pray for his protection and trust the law enforcement to keep him safe.
And as a matter of fact, I just saw recently where they're using robotic dogs at his Mar-a-Lago site. They're even patrolling, and of course with cameras and things of that nature on the dogs, but very interesting, the technology being utilized in that regard.
Yeah, and again, all this great technology that's coming about with artificial intelligence and the robotic things, it's great. And some of that's been used for years, but it's definitely upgraded. So we just trust the Lord to keep him safe.
So let's talk about another statement here from Israel's Prime Minister. He said that he and President Trump, he used this term, we see eye to eye on the Iranian threat. And the supreme leader of Iran, the Ali Khamenei, he and his foreign ministry are hinting that they might be trying to accelerate their nuclear weapons development.
Well, here's and again, yes, that's all true. Here's what I think Iran is doing, though, at least based on current open source intelligence. Iran appears to be backing down a bit. They were going to come after Israel again, have a giant attack on them. Of course, this has been a back and forth issue with Iran over the past several months. And I'm not quite sure where this is going to go. I strongly feel that President Trump wants to wipe out the Iranians' ability to have the nuclear program. So we're speculating based on how we know these individuals, what we know from open source media. I very strongly think either the IDF or America is going to get involved with stopping their nuclear program, and very much possible by military means.
Dr. Richard Schmidt with us here on inFocus, and from Prophecy Focus Ministries and pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church, and talking about the impact of the U.S. election on Israel and related issues with this as well. I find it also interesting, we were just talking about Iran, that Israel just purchased from the United States a squadron of 25 F-15E fighter jets. Israel seems to be always in a ready state, whether it needs to be But it's always a defensive posture. Sometimes they go on the offense in order to protect themselves in that regard.
Yeah, and again, with President Trump at the helm now, I think it's going to accelerate getting weaponry to Israel. We've seen that. Some of the holdups that the Biden-Harris administration did, I think that's all going to be wiped out now. So America has been a very strong supporter, specifically through Trump administration, to get these weaponry out there. The thing that amazes me is that the IDF has yet, at least to my knowledge, has yet to have a plane shot down. They go into Iran, they wipe, I mean, it's unbelievable. They take 140 jets, go into Iran, they take out all their surveillance equipment, nobody gets hit from the IDF, they all end up back home. Is it a miracle? Is it they're that good? Maybe a bit of both.
Have their hands been tied by the Biden-Harris administration?
Well, to some degree, yes. I mean, we've seen that President Biden specifically, he was like, do not go after Iran, do not go after their nuclear programs, stay away from the oil fields. Very, very strict, if you will. You want our weaponry, then you're going to fight by America's rules.
But Iran's the problem.
And Iran's the problem, right. So I think as we see the new administration come about, all those things I strongly believe are going to change based on what President Trump has put out in his campaign materials.
Another aspect here is the Israeli Special Operations veteran, Aaron Cohen, said this. He said, Iran knows that the moment he gets sworn in, maximum pressure is coming.
I think maximum pressure is already being started. So we know that President Trump has been having talks with some of these world leaders. He's putting the gauntlet down. Economic sanctions, he's already said they're going to happen. Military intervention, I think, is on the table. I mean, I think more that it's going to happen. So all these things are there. It's not saber rattling, if you will, just trying to scare folks. He's going to make good on these things, and we're going to see some major changes in the Middle East.
Peace through strength?
Exactly. Again, when you just threaten strength, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. President Trump has a history of when he says he's going to do something, it's going to happen.
I also find it interesting that in less than 24 hours after this election, that Donald Trump was elected, Iran's currency fell to an all-time low. According to Associated Press, the rial traded at 703,000 rials to the dollar in Tehran. There's been a lot of fluctuation since the election has taken place, but they're expecting sanctions to come to them from the Trump administration, sanctions that put them in a tailspin under the previous Trump administration. They were able to come out of that tailspin during the Biden-Harris administration, but they're fearing going back into that tailspin once again.
All right, so under the Biden-Harris administration, actually Iran had tremendous economic growth. Oil sales went through the roof. Things are going great for them. Well, now what happens if you take out the oil fields? What happens with the other economic sanctions? It's going to basically, and President Trump had made it clear during his first administration, he all but bankrupted Iran. So he's going to come after him strong again, and he needs to come after him strong. The thing I like to remember is Iran just doesn't hate Israel, they hate America too. The nuclear program, the things that they're putting together, they want the big Satan, which they consider to be America, disposed of. You've got to be strong on this, and that's exactly what I believe this current administration is going to do.
Could one make an argument that under the Biden-Harris administration, restoring these funds, allowing them to sell oil, or all these things, that's what funded these wars against Israel?
I think that's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. The money that Iran was allowed to get, the weaponry that they were able to buy and purchase and make, and of course the plants that they had where they were making things in Iran. And of course the IDF just wiped a good portion of those out. But yes, America basically supported Iran's economic bolster for the last 4 years. It's got to stop, and I believe it will stop.
So probably also we can anticipate the sanctions that we saw under the first Trump administration are going to come back in full force.
There's no doubt about it. In fact, President Trump, like I said, right before he even was inaugurated or will be inaugurated, what's going to take place? Well, those sanctions, he's already had the talks with these leaders. They know what's coming. And again, you just mentioned the stock market and the money in Iran has taken a complete tumble. Mm-hmm. Well, if you think your economy is going to basically be put under pressure by America, if they are scared to death that their main resources are going to be bombed, taken out, it's going to scare the people. The investors are going to pull their money out. It's just not worth it.
We want to look at another aspect since we're on this funding aspect just a bit, and we know that a couple of appointments made by President Trump are going to include Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to really take a look over and do a deep dive into the finances of this country and pull back on all these agencies that are just regulating. There are a lot of regulators, but very little real meat coming from these. But one of the areas as well about finances has been what we saw under the first Trump administration is that he had paused all the U.S. aid to UNRWA, the UN Relief and Works Agency, even paused aid to Gaza. And what happened under Biden-Harris? They brought all that money back for UNRWA once again. We understand that under a Trump administration, I think we can anticipate the same thing happening because of especially all that's come to light about UNRWA's link to terrorism itself.
Yeah, absolutely. The United Nations has been a disaster. It's been a disaster from, if you will, a good government-based thing for America. They've been giving America fits. They've been giving Israel, not the Middle East, they've been giving Israel major problems. And they're really doing nothing when it comes to protecting that which is right. I'll just put it this way, from a perspective of who's doing right, who's doing wrong, what countries are supporting good, what countries are supporting, and I'll just use the word evil. The United Nations has been very pro-Palestinian, they've been very pro-Islamic, and again, we love our Muslim brothers and sisters, but they have a different philosophy, which is a lot of the jihad things have been coming out.
You love the Muslims, but you're rejecting Islam itself.
Yes. And when Islam is being pushed in the United Nations, when, if you will, Christianity, Jewish beliefs are being pushed back, that's a serious problem. They're basically, the UN has made it into a religious war. They've been siding, again, a lot with the Islamic Palestinian side, anti-Semitism, anti-America. It's not right. We shouldn't be a part of it.
Okay, so we're going to take another look at another issue here, and this is under the previous Trump administration. We saw him declare the Houthis a foreign terrorist organization. Biden-Harris administration rescinded that.
Yeah, well, again, when you look at the Biden-Harris administration, I just have to be straightforward. They were not supporting America 100%. They were supporting the Jewish people too. What were they doing? It was back and forth trying to get political leverage. Well, we have a lot of Palestinians that are part of America. We have a small percentage of Jews that are part of America. We've got a large percent of Americans that are pro-Israel. So they had to constantly do this back and forth. Well, we got to appease the Islamic Palestinian side. Then we have to appease the Jewish Christian side. Let's just make up our minds, which I believe President Trump has made up his mind. Mm-hmm. He's going to support that which is right, that which is good for the American people. And it's not about a religious war. It's about let's start doing right.
Where are the Houthis coming from? Where are they operating from, and what exactly are they doing?
Right. So the Houthis, of course, come out of Yemen. They're about a little over 1,200 miles south of Israel, but it's another terrorist organization, right along with Hamas and Hezbollah. Of course, we know Hamas is out of Gaza, which has been the big war, the Hezbollah up north. Mm-hmm. Houthis coming out of Yemen. They've caused a lot of issues down in the Red Sea area. They've gone after several our military ships and so forth. Just recently, they attacked American ships. So they're a problem. But again, it all boils down to who's the head of the organization. Well, we look at Iran. We look at Khamenei and his leadership, which is totally against America, totally against Israel, and they're not going to stop until they get stopped.
President Trump announced some nominations. Let's talk about some of those. Governor Mike Huckabee to be the ambassador to Israel. Your response?
Well, Mike Huckabee is, to my knowledge, and a little bit, I don't know him personally, but I've watched him. He appears to be a good, solid, strong Christian individual, so I respect that greatly. He's been very, very pro-Israel, which makes sense. I mean, he certainly knows President Trump, and I think it was a great pick. Here's an individual, even though he's not a Jewish individual, he's a Gentile, but he loves the Jewish people. Why does he love the Jewish people? Because he's a Christian. He goes back to Genesis chapter 12. I'll bless those who bless Israel, curse those who curse Israel. And Mike Huckabee's got it right. It's like we need to support our ally and, if you will, our biblical friend, the Jewish people.
Another appointment, Senator Marco Rubio has been nominated, I should say, for Secretary of State. This is a position that has a great, huge impact. We have seen Antony Blinken, multiple trips over to Israel back and forth. But we understand Marco Rubio has also been a strong supporter of Israel.
He has. The little bit that I know about him, and I know less about him than Mike Huckabee, but it's very interesting. And this is kind of a political thing that many of us watched. There was some severe issues in the campaigns, the presidential campaigns of Marco Rubio versus President Trump. A lot of mean rhetoric was stated. So here's the cool thing, or the good thing. You see two individuals that literally were, they were at it. They were fighting pretty good. And now all of a sudden it's like, all right, that was all politics. Let's get down to what we truly believe in, what we're truly going to support. Mm-hmm. And the friendship is there, I believe, between the two individuals. And I believe Marco Rubio will do his absolute best to protect the American citizenry.
Another appointment we'll talk about here, and this is Congresswoman Elise Stefanik out of New York, who's been nominated here to be Ambassador of the United Nations. Such a position is also very critical for Israel at this time, and I saw some of the media out of Israel. They're commending this appointment.
Well, again, this is a tough position to put Elise into, if you will. She's got to be able to defend America, defend our positions under extreme criticism that she's going to get from people in the UN and other countries. Mm-hmm. So we're looking for her. She's got to be strong. She's got to, she's going to be putting herself out there. So that's another person we need to pray for, because she's going to be under serious attack, but she's got a job to do, and we're looking forward to do it.
And again, prayer is so critical for each of these individuals.
Absolutely. Prayer changes things, and God, it's like many people, it's like, well, does God really listen to us? We pray, we don't always get what we're praying for, and things don't seem to always go what I'm asking for, but God has a perfect will. And the more we pray, the more we beg God for things. Jim, I 100% agree or believe that because of the prayers of God's people, that's why we have this current election outcome that we do. People got tired and fed up with things, and I like to go to that 2 Chronicles 7:14. God told the Jewish people, listen, if your country's in a mess, which ours is, it's time for God's people to pray, to humble themselves, to seek his face, to turn from their wicked ways, and God said he would hear. I think America realizing we better get on our face, and God's people across the country, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of Christians, beg God for a changed country. And I believe God took that serious and answered that prayer.
So it is a multiplicity of things, but you mentioned just the impact this is having upon Israel. But the agenda that we're following, the pathway toward socialism here in our country was very, very rampant. We were just marching right with the drummer down that path as a nation. We see where we were headed toward the killing of preborn children. And this was the major campaign issue from Kamala Harris. She started that Reproductive Freedom for All tour right here in Madison, Wisconsin, in our state. And it's that issue. When people started becoming aware of gender-related issues too, and the forcing of teams to allow biological males who wish to identify as female onto their teams, and women are getting injured. Women's sports is being decimated, and we're seeing so many medals that have been taken away from women. We are seeing all of these fronts and much more, all impacted by this election.
Yeah, and that's again, America as a whole. Even those that aren't conservatives realize our country's going in a horrible, horrible direction. Mm-hmm. The abortion issue, yes. Quite frankly, that one we knew was going to be a tough one because there's such a major amount of people that are pro-abortion right now. Obviously, as Christian conservatives, we're totally against it, but that was a huge issue. But here's what I think overcame it. Even though that was the mantra of the Democratic Party, The one thing, if you will, whether people appreciate it or not, when Roe versus Wade went away, the federal government technically at this point has no jurisdiction over abortion, so it did come down to the states. So right here in Wisconsin, where we're from, we still have a problem because our governor and, if you will, those in legislative authority are still pushing that concept. But from a federal level, the President Trump has made it clear that this is a state issue. So that took that off the plate. So when we're looking at the other things you're talking about, lawlessness, national security, the LGBTQI plus agenda, the transgender issue, mutilating children, and all the things that you just mentioned, America finally said, apparently, and they voted that way, enough's enough, let's get back to some fundamental, at least concepts that, for our perspective, are a little bit more on the worldview of the biblical basis. People are getting fed up with the lawlessness and the absolute debauchery that's taking place in our country. We got to get back to some normalcy.
I have several more questions here pertaining to Israel. You're able to join us next week on inFocus here as well?
Well, I'd love to do that.
Great, we appreciate that. Let me just ask this here in our final couple of minutes or so that we have. Prophetically speaking, and we'll talk more about this next week as well. Where are we in the scheme of things? I mean, it seemed like we're fast headed toward this one world order, socialism, world government, etc. Where do you see things at this time?
All right, so I always like to go to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. The Apostle Paul warned Timothy 2,000 years ago. He said, listen, I want to tell you what's going to happen in the last days of the church age. And he made this statement, perilous times will come. Perilous, dangerous times and seasons will come at the end of the age. So what are we talking about? The good news is, even though we're seeing some horrible, perilous things that have happened, all of a sudden God has given us a little bit of a reprieve right now. And we've been praying for that. As long as the church is here on this earth, God, would you please have mercy on us? Would you let us keep the gospel moving forward? So we're seeing these horrible things take place, which is triggering what? Jesus is going to be coming back soon. So that's the good news. What does that tell us then? We're looking, it's Titus 2:13 tells us this. What are we doing? We're waiting for Jesus to come to take us out of here. Then we know the minute the church leaves at the rapture of the church, 1 Thessalonians 4:13-18, this world will be turned over to, if you will, the satanic, demonic, Antichrist system. Until then, we need to keep working for Christ until he takes us home.
Amen. We'll talk more about that next week here in the program. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks so much.
Pastor Richard Schmidt with us here today. And friends, you can check out his website, a number of resources there, prophecyfocus.org. prophecyfocus.org. You can reach out to him also at Union Grove Baptist Church, Union Grove, Wisconsin. Their phone number is 262-878-1264, 262-878-1264. Thank you, friends, for joining us tonight on inFocus. Good night.